going on, Comic Book Nation? Jim Viscardi here at San Diego Comic-Con 2018, and today we have a very special guest with us in the studio. Marvel Studios is celebrating its 10th anniversary, and the gentleman sitting next to me has basically helped bring a lot of our favorite movies to life. Ryan Mienerding. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I gotta ask, when you guys started on Iron Man, did you have any idea the road you were about to get on?
No, I mean, in terms of me being in the film business, that was really my first big movie. I was just excited to be there. I was excited to be working for Jon Favreau. I had met John previously on a version of John Carter of Mars that didn't go forward, and he liked my work and brought me on. So I was just honestly feeling lucky to be there with such a talented crew of people. The place was so full of energy, so because it was like startup movie studios don't happen every day, right? So everybody was so impassioned to get going on something that felt like they were part of something new and big and exciting.
Now, comics in general, just is something that I know you've been, a fan of for a while. As you've, as your career has sort of grown, have you had any sort of like real fanboy moments?
There's too many to count in a lot of ways. I mean, from meeting awesome comic book artists to meeting people like Joe Quesada and having like cool conversations about the work that I'm doing and the work that he's doing. The studio itself has grown so much, and the popularity has grown so much too. Just seeing a whole new generation, a whole like broadening of the comic book audience happen too. Just is such a amazing thing to be a part of. Other moments. I got to meet Stan Lee briefly. I got to meet Todd McFarlane briefly. I got to meet Mike Zeck, which is a huge, like he's done some of my favorite covers, artwork in general, but some of my favorite covers throughout the years too. And then just for me, I mean, it's a very broad question.
Yeah,
it could mean any of those things, or it could also mean just like the idea of being able to work on a Spider-Man costume and being able to and
put your stamp on something like that.
That's one way of looking at it. I would just look at it as like, just being able to work on it is an amazing thing, and like try to find something that was could feel classic but also feel slightly different from the previous awesome film costumes, and bringing him into the MCU. So
what's generally the approach that you take when, say, like you're working on a costume like Spider-Man, and obviously you want to invoke a lot of the classic looks of it, but what sort of goes through the decision-making process for you to make the tweaks and the updates for film?
Spider-Man's a really interesting like design challenge, because the film suits have been so successful. Like there's not one necessarily you look at and you're like, oh, that didn't work. They all are really inspiring and really representative of cool eras of the comics. And some have gone in new, interesting directions as well. So when we're trying to find a new direction to sort of make him unique in the MCU, it definitely was like, there's so much awesome stuff. What can we do that was awesome as well? And for me, it was going back to, when I was growing up, Spider-Man, before McFarlane came along, it was all about John Romita Sr. So trying to find a way to get those eyes on that head with the thicker black frames and a little bit more sort of fanciful swoop in the corner. And honestly, the emotive eyes was something that I pitched simply to get the Romita eyes in there, because like justifying that thick black frame is sometimes hard in like a real setting. And then once that head was sort of figured out, it was about trying to work him into the story world of the MCU. So if it's a Stark suit, how do we put something that feels a little bit more technology than like his suits, than Spider-Man suits typically are? And really just modifying that sort of classic Ditko or Romita costume to fit in with a Stark aesthetic.
Since you've started, you've been able to sort of build a pretty awesome team around you. I know not everyone gets to work on every movie. How do you guys split that up? Like if someone really wants to, say work on Captain Marvel, can they, or is it more like, well, we need you for Black Panther, or we need you for, something else? Yeah,
I mean, our core team has sort of been there I've been there for 12 years, and most of our team was hired probably about 8 years ago. So all of us have, it's a really, as much as Stan Lee would used to talk about the bullpen of artists, like that's kind of what we have now, is like everyone is friends with each other, we can communicate really easily, we can talk about like what's coming up, what's going on. In terms of like who's leading the teams, like it ends up kind of just being a natural progression so far. I've been fortunate enough to work on things that I love. Andy Park has had a chance to work on, I hope, things that he loves.
Right.
And then with the rest of the team, it ends up really just being like giving everybody a shot to have a chance to do some part of the MCU that's gonna be their own. And I think we've been able to work it so that everybody really has their voice heard and is able to work on something cool.
Right. I know, obviously we can't talk about stuff that you haven't announced, but, Kevin Feige said that, there's a roadmap to 2020. Is that stuff that you guys are already sort of working on, or is the timeline not necessarily that far out for you guys, at least?
I mean, I currently am still working on Avengers 4 stuff. I mean, we still are cranking on that stuff. There's definitely other things in the works, but, we're not... Our department is one of the first departments that gets going on the new productions, but we're also not necessarily privy to all of the plans. So once we hear of them, we get going. But I can't really talk about.
Right. No, of course. Of the suits that you've been able to update, and I know it's sort of like choosing your favorite child or whatnot, but is there one that you're like not the most proud of, basically, that when you look at it, be like, oh yeah, that one I nailed?
I don't know if I look at it that way. I mean, I definitely have favorites and things that I'm proud of.
Right.
The Mark I Iron Man suit was the first film costume that I really had ever been able to work on that got on screen, and because it's the first essential, MCU costume that was created for screen, or that appeared on screen as well. That one will always have a special place in my heart. I mean, all of the Cap costumes, being a part of all of them has been such an amazing thing, because his journey through the MCU has really told through his costumes as well. There's a great narrative that happens with the stories that they've been able to tell in the movies and how they've been visually represented in the costumes. So just being a part of those costumes, and then all the Spidey costumes are it's a dream come true. I never thought I was going to be able to work on Spidey.
Right. Is there a comics character that you are just basically waiting for Kevin to be like, go?
Oh, there's so many. Come on, there's so many. I mean, there's so many in the cosmic universe. There's so many in potential deals that could be happening.
Right. So you're just waiting to get Wolverine just in front of you on the board.
There's characters I love. I mean, I love the characters everybody else loves. I'd love to take a shot at the Fantastic Four. I'd love to take a shot of any of the X-Men. We'll see what happens. We're still waiting to hear.
What would you say the biggest misconception is for what you guys do from like a fan standpoint?
I don't know if it's from a fan standpoint. I mean, I think from people, like a general audience standpoint, I don't know if they know that there's needs to be any translation from the comics page to the screen, and that my job wouldn't even be necessary. They sort of say like, oh yeah, that just looks like Captain America. Right. When, if you're going back before the first Captain America movie, like when we're thinking of trying to create a Captain America costume for the films, that's a little bit of a challenge. Like it is like, how do we transition him into something that isn't silly or goofy? And I feel like we were able to find that balance. I don't know if there's any other misconceptions. I mean, I think there's a few things that they don't know, that I'm at work until 3 a.m. quite often. like there's a real, you really have to maintain the passion in working on some of these things, because it can be a lot of long hours and a lot of trying to really to get something right. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort, and thankfully Marvel's really interested in getting stuff right. So that's an opportunity that we have, and but I don't know if I can come up with anything else that's sort of like a. Do you have an example of like what?
Well, it's one of those things where I feel like anytime we see a new costume or something, fans will always try and dissect, where the inspiration may have came from. Like, is it, for Spider-Man, Spider-Man's a perfect example. Todd had a certain look, Romita has a certain look, and I think sometimes that they think that you guys may just be wanting to put your own spin as opposed to trying to incorporate stuff like that, where there's like a mandate or something that it needs to be different for this. Let's go one last question, and we'll let you go. So when we get to see the stuff that you do when it comes out in various art books and things like that, or the stuff that studios releases, we usually see character, you know, pinups, but also some of the keyframes that you guys do. Which would you say you probably have more fun doing? Do you like doing the sort of bigger set piece stuff, or do you really like sort of taking a character apart and doing that whole turnaround?
I enjoy both sort of equally. I think the nailing the costumes and getting like every nuance as, you know, perfect as possible is something that's really gratifying, just because you can really, I think one of the hallmarks of an MCU, you know, movie is that the characters are sort of realized almost beyond reality. Like they're more finished. There's more detail in them than you would even maybe expect to see if you saw it in real life, right? And we usually have to try and put that detail in. It can come from the costume department and the costume designers. It can also come from visual effects, but we're usually trying to put as much of that in there as possible, and that just takes a lot of time. The keyframe moments, I always love doing small intimate moments. I like doing the moments that are sort of like the moments you wouldn't necessarily expect in a comic book movie. Doing big action stuff is always awesome too, and like seeing those two characters fight that you've never seen before. But there's some part of me that just likes doing, like, you know, Tony building stuff in his garage. Like, what is coming up with ideas for that? Like, how are we going to see his character revealed through that type of those types of scenes and visuals?